Welcome back to Conversations on a Bench. I'm Kim Cook with Bread of Life Mission, and we are sitting here on this bench for 24 hours. I guess not we, me, for 24 hours and talking to people about homeless issues. And actually, we're part of Citygate Network. So there are 70 other missions across the country who are doing this as we speak for 24 hours. So anyway, I want to just welcome Chief Amy Barden, who is here with the Seattle Care Department. And thank you so much for coming. And you were one of, very soon after I got here, I met you,
Yeah.
and we just connected, and
Yeah.
I so appreciate you
Yeah, no,
and
I'm
the
so
work
glad
you're
to
doing.
be here. I would stay here for 24 hours with you, honestly. I'd be your whole lineup. I thought,
And
oh,
we
I wanna
could talk
to,
for
oh,
24
yeah, I want
hours.
to talk to all of those people. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So tell people a little bit more about what you do and what CARE is.
Yeah, so Seattle 3 years ago set up a third public safety department to be positioned co-equal with the police department and the fire department. I house Seattle 911 in my department, which fields about 900,000 calls a year for
Wow.
service. And then the second division, the division we're more well known for right now, is the care team, the care responders. These are first responders who go out to behavioral health calls, sometimes alongside police or fire, sometimes solo. And so the basic idea is to just match the right discipline to the call. Right?
Yeah.
If you spend time in 911, I'm always inviting people to come listen, because you realize quickly the threats to life in this city are suicide and overdose and the impacts of being unhoused. And so those are behavioral health calls, right? Those are public health calls and not appropriate much of the time for law enforcement.
Yeah, we see a lot of that down here. I was just telling Lisa that we've had a couple of issues the last few days with some really some crises.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm wondering if there's really some bad drug supply
Yeah.
out there right now. Are
Yeah.
you seeing that?
Yeah, yep, there is. And it is interesting. I'm always in the kind of the coroner's reports and the public health data. And then obviously working with police department with narcotics. And I think people don't understand that the drugs on our streets right now, fentanyl, those are lethal. Those are lethal drugs. And so I think sometimes we're conflating it with, when we were growing up. Even the hard drugs then were much less lethal than what we have on the streets now. So I often quote Chloe Gale, who runs REACH, Evergreen Treatment. She taught me to say early that the drug supply is poisoned. And
really
people
is.
need to understand that.
Yeah. You were in Fentanyl Death Incorporated.
Oh, I was. Yep.
And that is one of the best
Yeah.
documentaries I've seen
Yeah.
on fentanyl. I learned so much, and I
Yeah.
work in this industry.
Yeah.
The thing that stuck out to me was that, if for people who don't know,
Yeah.
fentanyl is kind of like salt crystals or sugar, and that the amount that's in a salt packet,
Yeah.
I think the movie said it would be enough to kill 50 people.
Yeah.
But when I got
Yeah.
looking it up, it said no, actually 100
Yeah.
people. Like it doesn't take much, and
Yeah.
it's infected. It is in all the other drug supplies.
Yeah.
So people who are taking, who are just getting weed,
Yeah.
which I don't mean just, because I don't think that should be
Yeah.
a legal drug either, but they think they're just doing weed,
Yeah.
and they're getting fentanyl and dying.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that I met my husband on the job. He was in the police department. He was the deputy chief. We met in a crime statistics meeting. That's like a whole other bench conversation. But it was interesting, having a professional relationship with him, and then also personally how much I came to understand about narcotics, because he was the narcotics commander in SPD for many years. And he explained to me basically the economics of the drug trade, that historically you'd have these are your heroin folks, these are your meth folks, these are your pot folks, and that there's this sort of ecosystem. And that when fentanyl started hitting the streets, it was heroin laced with. And so
Right.
people didn't know why this is the best high, but this is the best high. And so
Right.
then if the other dealers didn't match that, they were going to go out of business. It's just an economic proposition. I have often held up that example of the failure of bureaucracy to not track that trend data.
Yeah.
It has been the leading cause of death, I think since 2018 or 2019. Statistically, nationally, half those folks are under the age of 40. And I did think it was a pandemic when I got here. You know, my first year on the job, King County, we lost, you know, almost 1,400 neighbors to overdose. And I felt like this is an emergency. These
It
are our
is.
neighbors. And the only silver lining about the opioid epidemic is we do know how to treat it. We do.
Mhm.
We understand a lot more. You've probably heard about the long-lasting injectable buprenorphine, which people say is miraculous, that it truly is a path off of this drug and into recovery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I'm looking for a partner
Yeah.
who will come into the mission and work with us with people
Oh,
because
we
really,
got to get that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
important.
because yes, you can. And actually, you're later. I'm going to be interviewing our chef, who was addicted to
Oh,
fentanyl,
no kidding.
and now he
Yeah.
works here for the mission, and he's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, I see him, and he's just this sweet guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him when, but we can look at people on the street and judge,
Yeah.
or we can help them and get
Yeah.
that sweet person back
Yeah.
that some family is missing. I'm
That's
sure, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that we're losing a generation if we haven't already,
Yeah.
right?
I totally agree with that. The simple lens through which I look at the problems, I just always think if this is my person, if this is my kid, or if this was me, or this is my mom or my sister, what would I do? How would I intervene? And I think the idea that we just leave people to make their choices and hope for the best, I think that is immoral, actually.
It really is.
I think when people are in these destructive and self-destructive cycles, pause for big truck.
Yeah, he was making the light.
You know,
He made it.
We should. I know, we should help. And the equivalent, I drew it in the documentary. I often think about the ethical inconsistency. Somebody calls 911 threatening to jump. I go get them. That is a
Yes.
priority one, lights and sirens call. Not thinking about their civil liberties in that moment. And so, I am absolutely a proponent of consent-based interventions. I know that diversion can work. I know that especially people with lived experience, they can often get to yes real
Yeah.
quick. But we're just not acting with enough urgency. And I don't
Yeah.
think people understand. You're going to talk to Joe Barsana.
Yeah.
Anyone can be Joe, right? I mean, he is an
No.
exceptionally gifted person. But again, people are gifted and they do recover. But we're not
Right.
making it easy to get into that recovery path.
Yeah, we definitely need to open that up. And I'm so glad that we're starting to look at addiction less as, I don't know, just something, bad decisions.
Yeah, yep.
But that it's a healthcare issue,
Yeah.
and that we need to help people overcome it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people are suffering, you know, and we do have a very addictive society. We have, Americans are kind of gluttonous, you know, we tend to really go to extremes. And
Yeah.
I think that underneath all of this, we need stronger connections to one another. We
Yeah.
all need to be attached to purpose in our lives, and we need healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
I was actually in a really interesting conversation yesterday. I'm on a statewide committee, sort of it's a working group. We do a lot of things around policing and mental health, first responder well-being and mental health. And yesterday the conversation was about alcohol use disorder in first response, which is absolutely pervasive.
Right.
But it's like these are just fundamentally really trauma-inducing, difficult jobs, and there's not a lot of space to cope to begin with. And so then we turn to substances. We turn to something that will create a sense of relief, even temporarily. And so I have compassion for all. I do not think that we should spend any real time judging how or why the person got here.
Right.
I feel like the person's here. How do we help? What do we do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I see that on our social media all the time. Just make them get a job,
Oh,
or
gosh.
you
Yeah.
know, that if they can afford an earring, they can
Yeah.
afford. Like, just stop.
That's some
just stop.
American bootstraps nonsense.
know,
It's still
right?
out there. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I get calls and emails from like moms and sisters and family members who are looking for their person.
I know.
Who looking for
Yeah.
the person they love,
Yeah.
and they're saying they're just so desperate.
Yeah.
Like, please, if you see my son,
Yep.
you know, and I just cannot imagine the pain of that. And
Yeah.
and so I really do see the guys that are in our program that are coming in our door as, well, first of all, God made them,
Yeah.
and they have innate dignity.
Right.
But on top of that, there's somebody's father
Yeah.
or brother or son,
Yep.
and I want to treat them the way I would hope somebody would treat one of my kids if
Yeah.
it was turned around.
It's so basic, isn't it?
It is.
I think just basic humanity. And I think, I get calls and emails from people all over the place. That happened quickly once I was I was probably after the first press conference. And I do often say publicly, I will respond. I will respond. I am a public servant. I will talk to anyone. I will always help if I can. And I am sort of positioned at this intersection of mental health, behavioral health, medical stuff, crime, and homeless
Right.
response. It's just sort of the design of the department. And it is absolutely heartbreaking. I have those subject lines. If you see my daughter, this is what she looks like. I think she's somewhere on the streets of Seattle. And what really makes me sad is people generally don't respond. They're always shocked when I do,
Yeah.
But I feel like if I was that mom, that is exactly what I would do.
And doesn't it just help you to remember why you're doing what you do?
100%.
It
Oh,
just,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I am uncomfortable in the space of politics. My whole career was, again, you're familiar to me, right? My whole career has been working with people like you,
Yeah.
just rolling up your sleeves and working really hard to try to intervene and make life better for folks. And so the nature of government and bureaucracy it's just hard for me. It's hard for me. It's not designed to be really reactive and reflexive and responsive. Right. It's not. It's just even the 2-year budget cycle. I was like, well, geez, that's not useful because again, these trends are changing all the time. Back to the fentanyl example, we really just set up our overdose response unit last year, right? Again, about 7 years late, I'm so glad it's up and running. The ORCA Center, our post-overdose recovery center, I got to visit this week, which is fantastic. But it took us so long to even get like political consensus and get the budget and get the design and and then set these things up. And I don't blame anyone for that. It's just the nature of government, And so again, that's my bias toward the nonprofits. I feel like we need to just make contracts and get out of the way. Just get people more of what they need so they can serve more people.
I would take that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say that working on a contract is its own kind of pain.
Yeah.
With
That's right.
certain government entities.
Yeah, and it takes people off the front lines. And so that's something else I advocate a lot about. I've been a grant maker in the past. I've certainly been a grant recipient. And oversight looks like, sure, there's a few metrics we're tracking, but it's really, I trust this leader. I know this model is good.
Right.
I can see some outcomes. I stay out of their way. And, trust that people will tell me what they need or when it's not going well.
Right.
But I think people are always fearful of losing their funding. So they don't want to admit, oh, this design we thought would work is failing. I don't want to tell you that because I don't want to lose my money. Right? And I feel like it's so unfortunate because we've designed it that way. It's like grant Hunger Games out there.
Yeah. Well, and don't get me started on how nonprofits are treated differently than businesses.
Oh,
and
my gosh, yes.
how we have to be so careful about how much we spend on marketing or whatever. People want us to grow and do more.
Yeah.
But they want to handcuff us in how we do it.
Totally.
And the rules are it's a double standard.
Yeah,
for sure.
That is totally right. In fact, this season of my career, that's what I thought I would be driving is IRS reform, because again, by design in this country, if you can't spend more than 20-30% on overhead, you can't ever really have research and development, right? You can't really have marketing. You can't all of these core functions that would help us to scale. And actually to test and sort of prove what we're doing, you can't pay for that stuff. Right? So that's where I think philanthropists need to come in and really provide a different level of support. Just, again, general fund, grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, now I'm fundraising.
This
took a turn.
And we're in that spot right now because, when I came in, there were 6 people on staff.
Oh, is that right? I didn't remember that. Yeah.
It was I was like, how are you guys doing all of this? And so we changed some of how we were doing things. And we're up to about 18 staff now.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's still not enough because it takes so much time and energy to walk with people to really find the healing that they need, right? Yeah. And so we're pivoting. But it's like when that ship is in the water and they've been going forward and now they're turning, they have to slow down and turn and then get up speed again. That's where we are.
Yeah.
And financially speaking, we're doing fine, but boy, it takes a lot to
Yeah.
turn and go the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just things have changed a lot, in the last 10 years. I think that we've been a little slow to apply what we know about the brain now. Neurosciences and
Yeah.
behavioral psychology are my areas of interest, and we
I love
know
that stuff.
I know, right? It's so fascinating because it's like we know actually how to repattern. We do. We
Right.
understand how the brain is patterning and what would be required actually to change the way that we think. And it was funny to start to understand academically, like even fake it till you make it. We say that's real, right? That's
Right.
real. If I want to be a good person, I have to first pretend like I'm a good person. What would a good person do, right? That's the name of the game. It's like, and then you start to behave that way, and then eventually it is like muscle memory. You become that
Yes.
thing that you were first pretending.
Yes.
And so that's what we see folks in recovery, that it is about that repatterning. How do we resolve conflict, right? How do I ask for help? How do I take initiative? And most of my career was around child welfare, foster care, and there's a concept in that space of reparenting,
Yes.
right? That some of us just make it to adulthood with some serious skills gaps, or just misunderstanding, or even more complex is if I have no sense of worth. Right. I mean, some people are born to be used or to be sold. Basically, their life does not have value, and so then, as an adult, where does that value come from? Right. It requires someone like you. It requires your staff. Somebody has to start messaging that your life does have value.
Yes.
And until you believe it yourself. And I think when I'm talking to people in recovery, especially, I'm very interested in corrections, because I don't think it's real corrective. I think we could do much better, but people who break these long cycles of crime and crisis, that's what they tell me. At a certain point, you start to believe you could be different. Not just that your life could be different, but I can be a different person.
Yes. That is so important.
Yeah.
Like when our guys come in, they're just beaten down and they've lost all hope.
Yeah.
But it takes us having hope for them.
Right. Oh, I like that. Yeah. Borrow mine.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
I love that.
We can have hope for them and set them up for success in the mission. And then at some point, as I was saying to Ryan a little while ago, the light comes on.
Yeah.
And they start to see that they can have hope for themselves.
Yeah.
And they're seeing other guys that are a little further ahead of them who are being successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, sort of cohort model, it gets really powerful. That's what I've realized, is that when people are a little bit ahead of you and you can see yourself in them, I just understand that. I think people like me have to have real humility, that no matter how much I study this stuff and how much I talk about it, I don't know what it feels like to be you, right? And that is the role of peers. It's one of my favorite aspects about, you'll talk to Joe, but I love drug diversion court here. I think graduation is like the greatest thing. I always cry because it's so inspiring to see the extent to which people can change, and to see those brief bright spots where the system is designed actually to help the person, right? Not to punish, to hold accountable, yes, but not to punish, to help change. And it is interesting because there's always all these people in process, just starting the drug court process, that are at that graduation, and you see the fear and the trepidation. And generally people tell me, no, I wouldn't have elected into this. I knew I had felony charges. I was going to be convicted. This, was the lesser of two evils in my mind. But then at a certain point, there is this conversion, right? As whatever needs to be addressed actually gets addressed. Generally, there is a trauma past, right? We know statistically, generally, people were victimized at some point, sometimes very early on. So you've got to surface and address that stuff. But what frustrates me is that we intervene so late. And then your guys, they have to reconcile and live often with a lot of grief and a lot of shame.
Yeah.
Because I know I harmed my people, and or I know I harmed community, and there's some things that are, you can't walk back.
That's the thing. Like I teach a class on emotional intelligence.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think they
that
put
is
me
awesome.
in there. They put me in that, so I'll learn it.
Yeah.
But I start hearing these guys' stories and start opening up, and I'm like, no wonder you're here.
Yeah. Oh, it's so predictable.
No wonder you've been incarcerated. No wonder you went to addiction, because I hear about their childhoods and the trauma that they've been through. And, we've got to do better about the healing and understand that it's not just the person we see in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I often say up close, everyone makes sense to me. Like once you have enough context,
Yeah.
it is so predictable.
Yeah.
So, I think as a society, we've got to get over this idea that there's like good people and there's bad
There's
people
them
and
and
we bucket
us.
people. Yeah, like it's just
Right.
nonsense. There's just people. And again, statistically, if we're all dealt the same hand, roughly we're going to react to it the same way. We know there's like X factors, right? Spirituality is one of them.
Right.
There's different protective factors, but generally it is predictable what happens to us.
Yeah.
And even we're all dealt hard hands sometimes, but then again, what are your affordances, right? I mean,
Right.
what are you equipped to meet that moment and to navigate it successfully? And some people just are not.
And some people were never given those tools as children.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I look at the mistakes I've made in my life, and I've made
Yeah.
some doozies.
Yeah, yeah,
But I had a support structure.
yeah.
I had a lot of really good tools that I did learn as a child
Yeah.
in a pretty healthy family,
Yeah.
somewhat healthy. And I just had what it took to rise above them eventually.
Yeah.
But I went through some painful years because of certain mistakes I made. And so I look at that and
Yeah.
I go, but by the grace of God,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
I don't have a mental illness
Yeah.
that I'm battling. I never got into addiction.
Yeah.
And those two right there.
Yeah, that's right.
Can
You're
just take somebody
80% ahead.
completely out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've had the support I needed, and I look at these guys, and they just
Yeah.
they don't have that.
Yeah.
So it could be any one of us.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. I think the older I get, the more I realize the lucky break. Like I won the lottery just to have two parents who thought I was exceptional. I'm not, but they always
Well,
like that.
I
Was
beg to differ because I
Well,
love you.
My mom will watch this and she'll like that you said that. But yeah, I mean, it's just that was so simple. That message was it was pervasive, and I
Yeah.
was held to account, man. It was a construction family. There, so it wasn't that I was coddled in any way. I just was taught that there's inherent value to life, all
Yes.
lives. That basic faith principles I was taught, and that my life had value. And that my job, I mean, I am an altruist the way that I was raised, because that was the idea was like, you just, whatever you've got to give, take it out for a spin.
Right.
Whatever that brain could do, use it. Whatever that heart can do, you use that.
Right.
And that is what your life is about. And again, that is absolutely irrespective of anything else, of any title or wealth or,
Right.
comments on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Outside of all of that, I am a person of value. Even in my dark days. And I think, it was really interesting my first weeks in 911. I mean, I was obsessed. I was just there all the time, listening to these calls coming in, watching the system failure, right? Watching, the rinse and repeat of people, both on the crime side and in the crisis side. And I realized quickly, some people are calling 911 because nobody else will answer, right?
Right.
That is the person who will answer.
Right.
And it just makes me so sad, because there's so many calls where I think, oh no, I would have called my brother for that, right? Or I would call my doctor for this. I've got all of this privilege where I personally have never called 911, in part by the grace of God and in part because I have always been resourced.
Right.
I've got my own first responders around me, right?
Yeah.
Especially now.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I'm one of that. Well, I need to take care of it, and I
Yeah.
shouldn't call.
Yeah.
But since I've been here, I actually have
You
called a
have
few
called,
times.
yeah. Are you
You
on our
may have heard
favorites
those
list?
calls. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I see things.
Yeah.
And I'm taking responsibility.
Right.
So, talk to people about what to do when they're seeing somebody in a fentanyl fold
Yeah.
or whatever they're seeing on the street. When do
Yeah.
they call? When do they not?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot. So my preference, I think for a couple of years, 911 had really poor staffing, and then also there were really no cops to send. And so I think people did stop calling. They felt like probably nobody's going to come, or I'm not sure if this is an emergency. I think with fentanyl, I do think that's an emergency. And I often, when I'm talking to community, it's very discernible what drugs are escalating behavior, and then
Right.
what you just described, that fentanyl is slowing you down,
Right.
That's what people are overdosing, slowing your breathing.
So,
and
for people who don't know, that fentanyl
yeah.
fold, I didn't know when I came here.
is that right?
If
Yeah.
you just see somebody standing slumped over with their arms down or whatever,
Yeah.
they have just taken
Yeah.
fentanyl.
Yeah,
and
that's
it
right.
stopped everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an interesting drug because it doesn't just stay in the bloodstream. And so the docs at Harborview explained that to me early, that people, basically your body is addled still. the the drug is in your body, but you don't feel high anymore, and so you dose again. And so that's why this really high rate of overdose is because people are redosing like every 4 hours. We do have a lot of first responder units now. I've got the care crisis responders are about to expand dramatically. So we'll be, if not 24/7, it's going to be 27. Most hours will be out citywide. We've got the Health 1, the Health 99 unit. So it is my preference. If you think, I always explain it in timeliness. If you think somebody could be, deceased or way worse off in an hour, please call.
Yes.
Because we'll triage it, right? If it's non-emergency, we'll reroute it. We direct to 988 all the time, right? Some people just need resources or they just need to be on the phone.
Right.
They're very vulnerable. They're having a dark night. And I've done live listening and crisis connections too. It's really cool. So, but right from 911, we'll triage it and send the best first response. And then the challenge is if we need a law enforcement response, they still have massive staffing shortage issues. I don't think people understand. Sometimes we have 60, 70 cops in the whole city. That is nothing in a city like this. Yeah. I started to say numbers.
Had so few.
Yeah. I didn't
goodness.
either until I was in 911, and you realize like, oh my gosh, it's East Precinct Saturday night. I've got 3 units, and again, it's really awful for dispatch because they're trying to make these judgment calls. All these, calls are stacked and holding. It's like, whose life do I value, right? It's very, very difficult. And so I'm happy to see the staffing improvements over there. But again, a significant solution is just scaling up the care responders because half of those calls have nothing to do with police or fire. They just don't. They're emergent. We need to send somebody. But an example I used recently, it was actually right when the pilot launched. There was a girl, I think, who was like 15 or 16. She had come to Seattle with her friends. I think she was from Portland. They got in a fight and they left her there downtown. It was in the evening and she didn't know what to do. And what do you do? So there's every day there's calls like that where I'm like, okay, that's not a law enforcement call, but it is an emergency. You can't leave this kid on the streets of Seattle, with no resources. So,
yeah.
So
if when you see somebody that may be a little more violent or vocal,
call
how
911.
do you decide to call 911?
Yep, call 911. If you think that there is, again, if somebody's escalating, right? What we don't want is let's wait until there's a crime and then call.
Right.
Again, 911 is often constrained by resources, but even for the data, it's really important that we know what is going on and that we understand, think about even the sort of the crisis hotspots, where crimes are happening, where crisis is happening. We need that information so that I can recommend what teams would you expand? How are we failing people?
Or somebody calls here and you don't get to him, but somebody else calls 2 blocks over, and he's maybe escalating.
Yeah,
you know where he is.
Yeah.
I think people just need to actually take that next step to call.
Yeah. No, that's right. It's I need to do a much better job of getting that messaging out. When to call 988 first. When do you call 911?
What is 988?
And so 988 is the suicide and crisis hotline that was mandated at a federal level. So I think this was back in 2018, 2019. It was like, okay, we definitely need a suicide hotline. Everybody needs this, right? Like 911. 911 started in 1968. It was like, all right, we need one number that everybody knows. So 988 is, again, here, the calls are handled by Crisis Connections, which is right near West Precinct, led by Michelle McDaniel, who is a fabulous, you need to have her on the bench next year, really wonderful leader. What we're working on, though, is how do we integrate these systems? Because in truth, people don't know who to call, right? They're going to guess wrong. So, at least 20-30% of the time we have people calling our non-emergency line in 911. And we're like, no, that's an emergency. And then vice versa. People will call and, one of the running jokes is like, well, that's not a crime, ma'am. That's a hoodie. It's like, this is not the right number for you. Or we don't know what to do about that furnace. And, so those calls come in all the time. So we're just trying to create a really simple system where if somebody calls 988, but actually it's like, suicidal ideation with a weapon, that is 911. And we need to get the right response out really quick. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and really,
I taught you something.
Yes,
That's
you
fun.
did.
Okay.
And really, make the mistake, right?
Yeah, totally.
Make the mistake. Call the wrong line.
Yeah,
You'll get
just
somewhere.
guess, and we'll get you to the right line. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Well, good.
Yeah.
what are some things that you think in our city and our nation that we need to change?
That is such an awesome
and
question.
and then talk to me about like the things that are really good right now, like
Yeah.
what is going
You
well.
want me to end on a high note? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I try.
Yeah, I would say nationally, one of the things I talk about all the time is stop politicizing these issues. We are talking about human suffering, right? When we're talking about our unhoused neighbors and we're talking about escalating gun violence and all, there's a lot of suffering involved. And using these issues to drive elections, to fear monger, it's just not useful.
Yeah.
It's not useful. It slows us down. I do think in Washington State, well, and I think in King County specifically, we're very philosophical. And I think often we want a perfect solution, a perfect design, a perfect theory of change before we go to act. Not
Right.
a thing.
No.
Not a thing. We should not be like that.
Lean startup.
Again, yeah, we need to act with urgency. And generally, every time I talk to the public or the press, I'm saying this is not political. This
Right.
is not. I am pragmatically looking at the types of suffering that we can see, and then scientifically, what do we know about that? What
Right.
might be the right intervention? We pretend in this country like we're very tolerant. No, we're not. No, we're not. We've decided what
No.
team we're on, and we reject anything else.
Right.
We've decided that if this is how I see harm reduction, then I'm going to reject all these other recovery paths.
Right.
Right? Or I believe in, you've got to kick it and be sober, and that's how you're going to go about it, and I reject everything else. Just stop. The
Right.
reality is people are different, and different people need different things.
Right.
You've heard me bemoan, I know, because this is a factor in child welfare, if you have a faith perspective, if that was fundamental to your well-being, it is likely to be fundamental to your recovery,
Yeah.
right? If I can reconnect with that sense of purpose, and all major world religions believe in forgiveness and redemption.
Right.
Those are core principles. And so I think it was kind of funny how, I'm from this sort of academic left world, how we decided, no, we're going to be smart and scientific, so we reject faith. And I'm like, well, come on now, that's just intolerant, right? And the name of the game is to make sure that we're matching the right resources with the person.
Right.
And so that's one thing. I feel like we each individually control what we say, and we need to stop the vitriol and stop the judgment. We can
Please,
advocate
yes.
for how I see it without disparaging and vilifying everyone else in the world. So that's
Right.
one thing. I often tell voters and people, anybody who says, in this area we're in, there's a single causal factor and a single solution, I'm like, just don't trust that person.
No.
That
It's an
person
onion.
does not.
Let's just peel it apart.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
And then I think, I'm a huge fan of volunteerism. We were just talking about that. It's one of the things I love about your mission is we need to come closer to these issues and actually be empathetic.
Yeah.
When you look in someone's eyes, it's like you're talking about, like, that is a person, and this
Yeah.
person is not so different than me. Even if there's a very different backstory, I've been to probably the most different places from where I grew up in the world. And you just see the common threads of humanity, right? And then a lot of life, it's like fear and love. And we're motivated by the same things. We need to be part of community.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, we're making it more complicated than it really needs to be. One thing I'm often telling electeds, trying to remind them that it's people who actually make the change.
Right.
So you have really cool programming, but it's not the virtue
up
of
to
the
them.
programming, right? But it's the case managers, and it's you, and it's
Right.
it really. My friend at UGM often quotes me back to myself. I said in a speech that really good case management looks a lot like love. Because
Yeah.
it does. That's what it looks like.
does.
It looks like I am invested in you, and this is unconditional.
Yeah.
And when you stumble, it's okay. We're going to work through
Right.
it, and we're going to try to understand what was going on, why the backslide. And so I feel like I guess I'm talking about a movement of compassion. We all need to behave that way and reject the vitriol, reject violence, just reject it. That is not a thing. And then you're going to see improvements in our collective mental health, right? You're going to see, I do talk a lot about hope. It's like, it's a hard thing to measure, but if we don't believe that there can be a Seattle without tents, and without gun violence and without random stabbings, and we'll never get there. We
Yeah.
have to believe it can be different.
I think you and I are having hope for Seattle right now.
Yeah,
before
that's
they
right.
do.
Borrow our hope.
Borrow our
yeah,
hope. Well, I
yeah,
do believe that
yeah.
it can happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can, because I see miraculous things every day,
Yeah.
and so again, that's what keeps me going. I can see it. Like I know the models that are working. You can see it in the data. You can see rates of recidivism and stabilization into housing, and you can see it. But then also, I just know too many people now, where I would have thought
Right.
on paper, I cannot believe you're here running this nonprofit, going home to your wife and 2 kids.
Right.
Anything is possible. That change is possible, but we just have to design for it. And we really do need to invest appropriately, at the government level. We
Right.
need to prioritize that we mitigate the suffering first, that people can move through this city and feel safe and healthy, and that when you're vulnerable or something's going wrong, you know who to call, and you can,
Right.
again, get a quick intervention,
Yeah.
rather than we ignore you until you do the worst crimes, and then
Right.
now we're going to intervene.
And somebody's really
And
hurt then.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what are the great things that are happening already?
Yeah, I mean this.
Yeah.
I think the greatest thing going on right now in a lot of places, especially in Seattle, it's like the collaboration, the sincere desire to work together, to, again, put aside any philosophical differences and just help. I think the nonprofits that I work with are all supportive of one another.
Right.
And that is so cool, because I think for a while we created sort of the Grants Hunger Games. We sort of pit nonprofits against each other, and it became very divisive, which was a problem. I think that we're starting to listen to people who have lived through these journeys or are on the other side.
Right.
I mean, that somebody asked the other day, who's like my thought partners, who's informing my thinking. I was like, everyone at Weld, right?
Yeah.
Everyone at the missions, the people not who are necessarily in the throes of the experience, but the people who are on the other side. Those are the folks I work with. Those are the folks I work for.
Right.
I trust them,
Yeah.
and I think we need to actually elevate those voices and then do what they say.
Right.
Truly, as everybody says, no, there had to be accountability. You didn't help me just giving me sandwiches, every day for 3 years.
The people who are saying no
Yeah.
accountability haven't
Don't
lived
know
through
anything
this.
about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think there's a real disconnect there. I think sometimes it's like, well, we know jails and prisons aren't great, so we shouldn't
Right.
have them. And I'm
Right.
like, well,
Okay.
no, that's
But-
not right. They're not great, so we should change them so
Yeah.
that they're rehabilitative.
Yes.
And we should, again, exhaust diversion, right?
Yeah.
Most people, you would never need to get to that type of intervention that's so coercive, most, but we do ignore people. We're like, oh, it's a misdemeanor, it's a misdemeanor, it's a misdemeanor. Oh, now you're facing life.
Right.
And we're doing the same thing with overdose, right? Just reverse it, reverse it, reverse it, reverse it. Rock bottom here is death.
Right.
And that is traumatic for the community, for the family. There's generational ripples.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like everyone is nodding when I talk about this, and that makes me hopeful.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a sort of a groundswell of compassion right now in the country, and just a better understanding that compassion doesn't mean no accountability.
Right.
Compassion means support and accountability, and everything needs to be designed with that recovery as the goal.
Yeah.
That the goal is not to punish someone long enough that we feel like justice is done. That's just nonsense.
No.
Yeah.
No. By then they've got so much more trauma. And
Yeah.
every one of our guys will tell you the best thing that ever happened to them was going to jail.
Is that right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hear that all the time. I mean, I'm often asking people, okay, but what if I had sent the care team out, and what if we had offered you this, and I want the answer to be like, yeah, that would have worked. I would have said yes. More often than not, if people, again, if it was heroin, fentanyl, meth, people are saying like, Amy, no day of the week. Like, my brain was consumed with a need to use this drug. I was going to have to be arrested. There was
Yeah.
going to have to be a real consequence. Or again, like the drug diversion court, that's why I like therapeutic courts, is there's a deterrent effect, right? Like you are facing this, however, it's not what we want for you. We want this.
Right.
And I feel like that's what the whole system should look like. Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shouldn't get in our first debate.
No.
Actually, that'd be entertaining, probably. I don't know what we
Yeah,
would disagree
I-
on. But
I just go, you know more than me.
maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so good to catch up with
Yes,
you.
you too. We haven't seen each other in so long.
It's been a long time.
It's been
It's
probably
funny,
9
the
months.
people getting a lot done are always hard to catch up with.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the sort of sleepy folks I get to see more of because they're always available. But
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're doing a good job. I've made the joke at some
Thank you.
sites, like, I'm sorry I never come here because it's not a 911 hotspot. So it means you're doing a really good job. You're managing
Oh,
your business
good.
and
Oh,
taking good care of people because
yeah.
otherwise I'd be here a lot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. But we have our times, but we try to
Yeah.
keep them low. And that's something I've always where I came from. They would really get you on the 911 calls,
Yeah.
and I'd be
Yeah.
like, wouldn't you rather
Yeah.
respond here
Yeah.
than somewhere on a street
Yeah.
corner? Like at
Isn't
least
that
we're
funny? Yeah. Yeah, because
we're
they're basically
trying to
incenting you
triage
not
this,
to call and not to address.
and hopefully you have less of them because we're here.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah.
there's no question. There's no question. I think, I mean, I love that Lisa Howard was just on, right?
Yeah.
Because I wish, again, we would just elevate her voice, the voice of the providers in this neighborhood, and again, kind of stay out of the way, help
Right.
drive the investment, but there's such good work happening.
Yeah.
Right?
And we just need to talk more about it. That was the thing on the bench when we did it last time,
Mm-hmm.
that many of us have very different ideas about what should be done.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
I don't really think that we should just be handing out, foils and needles and all
Yeah.
that. But there are those who sat here who really do believe that.
Yeah.
But if we get caught up in those disagreements,
Yeah.
we're not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to find where we're in alignment and just
Yeah.
stick on that.
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
And I think in general in our society, that's where we need to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
because we're going to have disagreements on things.
Yeah.
There's things I
Yeah.
believe strongly that somebody else believes
Yeah.
categorically I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But let's find where we're
Yeah.
the same.
I think where there's consensus, and the way I try to simplify that conversation is I want to see directional improvement. That's how I define everything. It's like if I can see that incrementally a person is improving, that they're coming into self-reliance, that they're coming into recovery, into purpose, strong relationships, I'm good.
Right.
I'm good, and it's interesting, one of my friends was the first methadone recipient in the state, which I never knew until recently. And it was really fascinating to hear his story, and then I also hear the stories about how, no, I took that, I sold it, or I would just use it to mix up my high,
Right.
basically. And so I think there's a lot of valid perspectives on these issues, but
Right.
as long as a person is getting better, I don't think we should do anything where predictably they're going to be the same or worse in 5 years.
Right.
I just think that's not right. That's not right. We can't say this is public health and then we don't treat it like health.
Right.
And, one of the metaphors that occurred to me one day early in the job when I was thinking about this specific conversation, because a lot of people were debating, investments as it relates to overdose response. And I thought about my dad. I lost my dad a long time ago. When I was young, he had just a very rare cancer diagnosis. He's about my age. He's given 30 days, right? And super healthy. I mean, it was so abstract. But I remember, watching my mom advocate for him, and he went to OHSU, to Research Hospital, and I remember it was like, okay, well, these are the different options. These are things that we could try, right? There's some experimental things, and I've thought, in the intervening years about what he was motivated by. I was pregnant with my fourth at the time. He had other grandkids, and he was a person of faith. He believed in miracles, right? And so all of those aspects of his life and his personal perspective informed what he chose to do,
Right.
which was to try some stuff, to try to buy himself a year, which he did get most of. I think it was about 10 months. And so it's interesting because if you just take a different perspective, a scientific perspective, it's like, this is a waste of time and money. You're terminal.
Right.
Don't do it.
Don't spend the money.
Yeah, and so that the grace and compassion that he was extended by those scientists, that's how I want us to treat people.
Yes.
Right? When we say, patient-centered or client-centered, let's actually do that.
Yeah.
And let's actually listen to people, whether or not they feel like they're getting better and this is useful. And, if there's also evidence to support what they're saying, just do more of that.
Yeah. Exactly.
I got to tell you a story that was really compelling to me this week. So I still kind of analyze all the calls that CARE's responding to every week. And this week there was one where a young man, I think he basically approached us, And he said he was 3 weeks sober. I think he had done time. And he said, I need you to take me out of the city. Basically, I'm having a bad day. I don't know if he used the term vulnerable, but he felt very vulnerable. He felt like I am likely to relapse, and this is the longest I've gone. I'm 3 weeks in. And he was like, can you just get me to the suburbs? Can you get me? And they learned, he was from Spokane, actually. That's where his community was and where his family was. But the desperation of that moment, it was in the evening too, and he just felt like, I can't go back to these environments. I'm not going to make it through the night. I'm going to use again. It's going to reset the whole thing. So we wound up getting him a Greyhound ticket, and we're like off to Spokane. But I know that people have those moments, right? And right now it's just too much a luck of the draw whether or not you have a care team to go, okay, first of all, the fact that he even had the impetus to advocate for himself like that.
He was reaching out for help, and that's where he called.
Yeah, but we know it's like those first weeks and months are so vulnerable for people. And so that's why this community matters so much, why the connection matters so much.
It really does. I was watching a reel recently, and this scientist was talking about the importance of community and of talking to somebody. And I was saying to our staff that, these guys, some of them will be in the program and they'll go use, right?
Yeah.
And something initiated that, and they didn't have a person that they were close enough to in the mission to go ask for help. So we have to have those close relationships to keep them from going out.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think it's a myth out there that we think therapy solves everything. That like an hour of therapy is an appropriate surrogate for community and family and loved ones. It's just not the same. And I never want to diminish the role of a therapist or a psychologist. Like, I understand that there's a role to play there, but that alone does not do it.
No.
It really doesn't. It's also, it's people can lie for an hour, right? I mean, it's generally the people who are closest to us. Like, I learn more about myself from my kids, especially as they entered adulthood.
Things I don't want to see about myself.
No, I'm serious. It's there have been so many things where I've been like, oh my gosh, that is my pattern. Like, I had no idea.
Sometimes that mirror is brutal.
It's absolutely, a sense of humor is imperative, I will say. Yeah, but I mean, I think that is the power of family, right? And again, relationships of trust where they know they can call me out on that. They're not going to be, I'm not going to be sensitive to it. I probably will laugh and, occasionally try to change something. So, but I just think when absent that structure, it's very, very hard, even for the most privileged among us. It's hard to have the self-awareness, to be the authority on our own vulnerability and to change in positive directions. I think we do that through relationships generally.
Yeah, we do. And, that might be a really good place to close. At the end of Fentanyl Death Incorporated, you made some really good comments. I think it was right at the end.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to share those.
Yeah, that was such an interesting interview. I mean, even how I got involved in that, it was because a producer had heard me draw the suicide metaphor, and it was in the days here where nobody was calling it an emergency. They just weren't.
Right.
It was like, well, we don't want to stigmatize people using, and, I think it was coming from a good place. It just wasn't useful, right? Because we were ignoring the crisis. And
let me interrupt you for a second. The crisis is, let me see if I remember it correctly. We have lost more people to fentanyl in the last, I don't know how long, than all of the wars since World War I.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the statistics in it. Yeah.
Why aren't we screaming about this?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And I think, again, those numbers are getting out there more. I hear it in both the right and the left. But so what? Right? It's like not so we can wring our hands about it, but we need to act with urgency and with purpose. And again, really acknowledge the overlap here. That it's not like, oh, these are the substance use people, and these are the homeless people, and these are the mental health people, and these are the criminal people. Like, no, it's, we have these behavioral health, we have people in crisis.
Right.
And we just need to respond and address whatever the factor is. If somebody is addicted to a lethal substance, I have to address that. Like, shelter is not going to solve that alone, right? And then conversely, if I am unhoused, it's pretty hard to case manage that person, right?
Yes.
And so that we need to really simplify and coordinate. The best cities, they're really deploying the first responders to be the responders.
Yeah.
And again, if John Ehrenfeld's team, if Health One, if they've reversed an overdose and they know that person is unsheltered, in a perfect world, they would have quick access to whatever would be best,
Right.
right? Tiny house village, or this, or again, I'm always reminding
Bread of
people,
Life.
you don't, yeah, I'm always reminding people, it's like, I don't need set aside beds at Bread of Life to refer people to Bread of Life.
Right.
We just need to know the system and understand who serves whom, best, probably,
Right.
under these circumstances, and just go. And so with back to fentanyl, it was actually my team teased me. I learned so much about it so fast because those were the emergencies.
Right.
And I was trying to understand, what do I even recommend? I'm being asked questions by counsel. I'm being, asked basically what should we invest in. And so I really wanted to understand as well as I could what was going on. And my team teased me because early on I was like, yeah, I'm the fentanyl gal. They were like, don't call yourself a fentanyl gal.
Don't do
It's not
that.
good for your brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did learn a lot about it. Again, it's sort of the pharmacology and then the paths into recovery, especially. And so that was why I was in this documentary. And it was such a challenging question at the end. The question was, so what? What do we do? Basically, we know that Americans specifically consume the share of illicit drugs globally. We do. I mean,
Right.
people debate, is it 20%, 40%? It's a lot. It's much more than it should be. And even compared to Europeans, right? Or other sort of similar societies, we know we've just got a very addictive culture. And so my response to it was something like, we have to rebuild the village. We have to start there. We've got to take care of one another. We need to, I'm always reminding people, no, you can ask him if he's okay. Generally we can tell if somebody appears to be violent or they might be escalating. It made me so sad when I moved back to Seattle. It's actually how I wound up in this space. I was just walking around downtown again and realizing how desensitized my neighbors are to this suffering, right?
Yeah.
That there are people physically suffering and languishing and dying on the sidewalk, and we're just going to
Walking
Nordstrom,
by them.
just walking by, not even looking down. And I thought, okay, so what has happened here? Because I was only gone for 6 years, but I really think that's, that macro level, it's kind of challenging in investments and structures and systems, but on a personal level, we all have a sphere of influence, and we can take care of one another. Everybody, if you've got money to give, everybody should be philanthropic. Everybody, I was raised to believe, no matter how much you have, you give 10% of your money and 10% of your time to people who are less privileged. I was just raised that, and it's sort of widow's mite thinking.
Yeah.
But I've carried that throughout my life. I still believe that. I think that those are also the happier people, as you know.
Yeah.
Like, there's no happy, selfish people.
Right.
On a deep level, there's just not. That's not
Right.
a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I remember you saying, like, it's as simple and as hard
Yeah. Yeah.
as having dinner and putting our phones away.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
just have dinner together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm as addicted as anybody to my phone. And that wasn't the case when
Yeah.
my kids were growing up,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine what it must be like now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the dinner table. I just feel like throughout my life, those are the happy memories. And even still, it's my husband and me. And I think people would laugh. Like, we have a full-on ritual every single night. I mean, we both like to cook. It's pretty simple. But we most often will light a candle and we just sit there and talk. And especially when he's retired from SPD now. But our days were intense, right? I mean, we'd go, they still are, but especially then, we're driving in, listening to police radio. By the time we get to the city, it's like 8,000 emergent events and a lot of suffering,
I can't
24/7. I mean, I do get calls 24/7. I carry
Yeah.
2 phones and I am expected to respond, like within 30 minutes. And so that is, there's a lot of natural compassion fatigue that can happen in his line of work, intense trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never in my life understand what he's seen and experienced, and, sort of the aggregate pain. but we're both pretty healthy, happy people, and I think that's a lot of it. Is the relationship is first, and we do know how to put it aside.
Right.
And I think even you doing this, it's like it's such a I accepted the invite real quick because it's like, oh yeah, I just get to sit and talk to someone.
Yeah.
I left my phone in the car, so
Oh, good.
hopefully Seattle didn't break while I was here, but I think we're okay.
Yeah. I just think that that's where we can start.
Yeah.
And if we're right, if we're healthy,
Yeah.
then we can be healthy in the way
Yeah.
that we reach out.
That's right.
So,
And people raising kids, and or maybe raising grandkids or influencing grandkids to demonstrate that.
yeah.
I've thought a lot, why didn't it even occur to me to use a substance ever? And again, because it wasn't about like religiosity. It wasn't anything
Yeah.
like that. It just didn't even occur to me.
Right.
I was just like, I think there are more fun things to do.
Right.
There are other things to do, and certainly other ways of coping.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom still runs 5 miles every morning. So I just grew up with examples of like, this is how you deal with stress.
Right.
And certainly having people to talk to,
Yeah.
who loved me.
It's a place to start.
Yeah,
Right?
I feel like we just solved it all, actually, right?
I think between us, we could solve it. We really
Maybe
could.
we need to start having bigger dinner parties or something
Let's
like
do
that.
that.
That'd be fun,
I'll
right?
be all over
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Progressive dinner.
Well,
yes.
Amy, thank you so much for coming. I
Yeah.
just love talking to you. And
Yeah.
every time we could just talk for hours, I think. But
Yeah.
we're
Maybe
both
next
busy.
year I'll come out like every 4th hour.
Okay, do that. And
You
you,
can
can
tell me
come
all the
back
cool
anytime
things.
anytime in the next 20 hours,
Uh,
and I would love to talk again.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Really, you are the real deal, and it is God's work. It does matter, and I just really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. We are going to go to a break, and I just want to. We'll be right back with, I don't know who else is coming up.
Surprise guest.
Yeah, we'll be back soon.